The girl loved the rain, loved the way it transformed the forest. Her name was Alara. She sought solace in the woods, in the hush of leaves and the drumming of water against canvas. Every week, she ventured into the heart of the woods, alone. Tonight, the rain was a symphony, a relentless liquid rhythm against the roof of her small tent. Alara lay listening, cocooned in her sleeping bag. The scent of wet earth and pine needles filled her senses. She smiled, a rare and private expression. This was her sanctuary. Outside, the forest was a canvas of shadows and silver. The twilight painted the trees in hues of green and gray, creating an almost otherworldly atmosphere. The leaves rustled softly, whispering secrets to the wind. The rain hammered down, sluicing through the canopy, each drop exploding in a miniature starburst. It was as if the heavens had opened, releasing a torrent that washed away the day's warmth, leaving the forest drenched and glistening. A thick mist clung to the ground, swirling and shifting with an eerie life of its own. The mist seemed to breathe, expanding and contracting, as if the forest itself was alive and watching. The air was heavy, pregnant with the smell of damp earth and decaying leaves. Each breath was a reminder of the forest's ancient cycle of life and death, a cycle that continued unabated, indifferent to the passage of time. The trees, ancient sentinels draped in moss and lichen, swayed rhythmically in the wind. Their movements were slow and deliberate, as if they were performing a timeless dance, a ritual as old as the forest itself. Their branches, like skeletal fingers, reached out towards the stormy sky. The clouds above roiled and churned, casting an ominous shadow over the landscape, adding to the forest's mystique. The path, usually familiar, was now a treacherous ribbon of mud and water, disappearing into the swirling mist. Each step was a gamble, the ground beneath shifting and unstable, making the journey through the forest a perilous endeavor. The only light came from Alara's lantern, a feeble sun in the heart of the dripping wilderness. Its glow was weak, barely piercing the darkness, but it was a beacon of hope in the otherwise impenetrable gloom. But something else flickered in the distance, a faint ethereal glow, like moonlight on water. It was mysterious and alluring, drawing Alara deeper into the forest, towards an unknown destination that promised both wonder and danger. Then she heard it. A sound so beautiful, so haunting, it sent shivers racing down her spine. A voice, singing, melodic, ethereal. It seemed to rise from the earth itself, weaving between the rain and the rustling leaves. The melody was unlike anything Alara had ever heard. It was ancient, filled with a deep, resonant sadness, yet it held a thread of something else, something hopeful, like a promise whispered on the wind. It pulled at her, this song, tugged at her soul with invisible strings. Alara sat up, her heart pounding. She strained to identify the source. It seemed to be coming from deeper in the woods, beckoning her forward. Curiosity warred with fear, but the song was a powerful lure. She had to find it. Slipping out of her tent, Alara ventured into the rain-soaked night. Each step was tentative, the mud sucking at her boots, the darkness pressing in on all sides, but the song grew stronger, guiding her, urging her onward. The ethereal glow she had glimpsed before was brighter now, illuminating a small clearing ahead. In the center, a gaping hole yawned open in the forest floor. The singing seemed to be emanating from its depths, echoing up from the bowels of the earth. Alara approached cautiously, her heart hammering against her ribs. The hole was deep and perfectly circular, its edges disappearing into the swirling mist. She knelt at the precipice, peering into the darkness. Section 5. A Prisoner of Time. At first, she saw nothing but blackness. Then, slowly, something began to take shape in the depths. A faint luminescence, like the light of 1,000 fireflies, coalesced in the darkness. As Alara watched, mesmerized, the light resolved itself into a figure. It was humanoid in form, but composed entirely of swirling, luminous energy. Its voice, the source of the captivating song, was filled with an ancient sorrow. The creature's light flickered, casting dancing shadows on the walls of the pit. It didn't seem to notice Alara, lost in its mournful song. She found herself drawn to it, compelled by an unseen force. This was no ordinary creature. This was something ancient, something magical. Section 6. Echoes of a Forgotten Pact. As Alara listened, she realized the song wasn't just a melody. It was a story that seemed to transcend time and space, reaching out to her from the depths of the forest. The notes carried with them a sense of ancient sorrow and longing, a tale that had been forgotten by the world but remembered by the trees and the wind. A tale woven from light and loss, whispered on the wind. Each note seemed to shimmer in the air, creating a tapestry of memories and emotions. The forest itself seemed to breathe with the rhythm of the song, as if it were alive and sharing its deepest secrets with her. The creature, she learned, was a being of pure energy, bound to the earth by a forgotten pact. Its form was ethereal, glowing with an inner light that pulsed like a heartbeat. It was both beautiful and tragic, a remnant of a time when magic and nature were one. It had been trapped in this pit for centuries, its light slowly fading, its song a desperate plea for release. The pit was dark and cold, a stark contrast to the creature's radiant glow. It was a prison of sorrow where the creature's hope had dwindled with each passing year. The pact, it sang, could only be broken by a mortal who chose to stay, to share their life force and free the creature from its prison. The scrolls spoke of an ancient agreement, a bond that tied the fate of the creature to the compassion of a human heart. It was a test of selflessness and courage. Alara's heart ached for the creature. She felt its pain as if it were her own, a deep, resonant sorrow that echoed within her. The thought of leaving it to suffer alone was unbearable. She had always been drawn to the strange and the forgotten, and this being's plight resonated deep within her soul. The forest had always been a place of mystery and wonder for her, a sanctuary where she felt a connection to something greater than herself. But the price of its freedom was high. The decision weighed heavily on her, a choice between her own life and the salvation of another. It was a crossroads that would define her destiny. To stay meant to abandon her life, to merge her essence with this creature of light and shadow. It was a sacrifice that required immense bravery and a heart full of love. Alara knew that this choice would change her forever, binding her to the forest and its ancient magic. Section 7. A Choice and a Consequence. The rain continued to fall, a relentless torrent against the earth. Each drop seemed to echo the turmoil within Alara's heart, a constant reminder of the weight of her decision. Time seemed to stand still as Alara weighed her decision. The world around her faded into the background, leaving only the sound of the rain and the beating of her own heart. The creature's song filled the air, a bittersweet symphony of sorrow and hope. It was a melody that spoke of ancient tales and forgotten dreams, resonating deep within her soul. To leave it here, trapped in the darkness, felt unbearable. The thought of abandoning the creature gnawed at her, a persistent ache that refused to be ignored. But could she sacrifice her own life, her own future, for a being she had just met? The uncertainty clouded her mind, making her question everything she believed in. Looking into the creature's luminous eyes, Alara saw a reflection of her own loneliness. It was as if the creature understood her pain, her fears, and her longing for connection. In that instant, she knew what she had to do. The clarity of her decision cut through the fog of doubt, filling her with a newfound resolve. Taking a deep breath, she reached out her hand towards the creature. Her fingers trembled, but her heart was steady, driven by an unshakable determination. A jolt of energy, pure and vibrant, surged between them. It was a connection that transcended words, a bond forged in the crucible of their shared pain and hope. The creature's song swelled, filling the clearing with a blinding light. The rain stopped. The world seemed to hold its breath, waiting for what would come next. The forest held its breath. In the stillness, a new beginning was born, one that would change the course of both their lives forever. Section 8. The silence after the song. When the light faded, Alara was gone. The hole in the ground had sealed shut, leaving no trace of its existence. The forest stood silent, the air thick with the memory of magic and loss. The only sound was the drip of water from the leaves, a slow, mournful rhythm. The creature was free, its light now a part of the wind, the rain, the very fabric of the forest. And somewhere, woven into the tapestry of the woods, was Alara. Her sacrifice had not been in vain. She had chosen to embrace the unknown, to answer a call from the deep. The forest, once her sanctuary, now held her heart. Section 9. The forest holds its breath. Years passed. The forest continued to thrive, its secrets whispered on the wind. Sometimes when the rain fell and the mist hung heavy in the air, those who wandered the woods could swear they heard a faint melody carried on the breeze, a haunting, beautiful song, filled with both sorrow and hope, and if they looked closely enough, they might see a faint glow emanating from the heart of the forest, a shimmering light that seemed to pulse with life itself, a testament to a choice made, a sacrifice given, and a bond forged in the depths of a rainy night. The forest held its breath, forever listening for the echo of its own forgotten song.
He was alone, surrounded by nature's embrace. The solitude allowed that she was not alone, that something or someone was lurking just beyond her line of sight. The air was thick with humidity, a storm brewing in the distance. The oppressive atmosphere added to her sense of foreboding, making her hyper-aware of every rustle and creak in the forest around her. The sunlight struggled to penetrate the dense canopy, casting long, eerie shadows on the forest floor. The interplay of light and shadow created an otherworldly landscape, one that seemed to shift and change with every passing moment. Still, Amelia pressed on, her she had made a mistake venturing into the forest alone this time. As night fell, the storm broke. The sky, once a canvas of stars, was now a tumultuous sea of dark clouds, swirling and clashing in a chaotic dance. The forest, usually a sanctuary of calm, transformed into a battleground of nature's fury. Rain lashed against her tent, the wind howling like a banshee. Each gust threatened to tear the fragile fabric apart, and the relentless downpour drummed a relentless rhythm on the roof. Amelia lay awake, listening to the symphony of the storm. The cacophony outside was both terrifying and mesmerizing, a reminder of nature's raw power. She could feel the cold seeping through the thin walls of her shelter, chilling her to the bone. Thunder rattled the ground, each flash of lightning illuminating the forest in a ghostly strobe. The brief moments of light revealed twisted branches and swaying trees, casting eerie shadows that danced and flickered. Fear, primal and sharp, pricked at the edges of her composure. She tried to steady her breathing, but the storm's ferocity made it difficult to find any semblance of calm. Every creak and groan of the forest seemed amplified, feeding her growing anxiety. She told herself it was just a storm, just nature, but the shadows outside her tent seemed to writhe and twist. Her mind played tricks on her, turning the familiar into the sinister. The darkness outside felt alive, as if it had a will of its own. Hours crawled by, each one stretching into an eternity. The storm showed no signs of abating, and the relentless noise made it impossible to sleep. She felt trapped in a never-ending nightmare with no escape in sight. Just when exhaustion was about to claim her, a flicker of light pierced through the relentless darkness outside. It was a small, almost imperceptible glow, but it stood out starkly against the blackness of the storm. It wasn't lightning, it was steady, unwavering. A beacon of hope or a harbinger of something unknown. The light seemed to call out to her, cutting through the chaos with its calm presence. Curiosity, a dangerous siren song in the storm, pulled at her. Despite the fear gnawing at her insides, she felt an irresistible urge to investigate. What could be out there, defying the storm's wrath? What could possibly be burning in this downpour? The question echoed in her mind, mingling with the roar of the storm. She knew she had to find out, even if it meant stepping into the heart of the tempest. Amelia peeked out from her tent flap. The rain was still coming down, a relentless torrent. But there it was, a beacon in the darkness. A fire, burning bright and defiant against the relentless rain. It made no sense. How could a fire burn like that in this weather? Fear battled with curiosity, and curiosity was winning. She told herself it was just someone else caught in the storm, that a little human connection would calm her nerves. Against her better judgment, she crept out of her tent and into the deluge, drawn towards the impossible fire like a moth to a flame. The forest floor was slick with mud, treacherous underfoot. Each step was a gamble, but the fire beckoned her forward, a beacon in the oppressive darkness. The rain had turned the ground into a quagmire, making every movement a struggle. Amelia's heart pounded in her chest, the sound almost drowned out by the relentless patter of rain on the leaves above. She could see the flickering light in the distance, a small but persistent glow that promised warmth and perhaps answers. The forest seemed to close in around her, the trees like silent sentinels watching her every move. Each step was a gamble, but the fire beckoned. As she drew closer, the faint sound of voices reached her ears. They were not the cries of lost souls, but something more deliberate, more sinister. The voices were low and rhythmic, blending with the sound of the rain to create an eerie symphony that sent chills down her spine. They weren't the panicked shouts of stranded hikers, but low rhythmic chants, eerie and unsettling. The chanting grew louder with each step. a haunting melody that seemed to resonate with the very soul of the forest. It was as if the trees themselves were whispering secrets, ancient and forgotten. The trees finally parted, revealing a clearing bathed in the fire's eerie glow. The light cast long dancing shadows that seemed to move with a life of their own. The air was thick with the scent of burning wood and something else, something metallic and sharp. A group of figures cloaked in dark hooded robes stood in a circle around the flames. Their robes were soaked from the rain, but they seemed oblivious to the cold and wet. They moved in unison, their chanting rising and falling like the tide. Their faces were obscured by the deep shadows of their hoods, their chanting sending shivers down Amelia's spine. She could feel the power in their words, a dark energy that seemed to pulse with each syllable. It was both terrifying and mesmerizing. She stood mesmerized, fear rooting her to the spot. What was this ritual? Who were these people? The question swirled in her mind, but she couldn't tear her eyes away. She knew she should run, but something held her there, a morbid curiosity that overpowered her fear. The night was alive with whispers, and she was caught in their spell. The chanting ceased abruptly, the silence deafening after the rhythmic drone. One by one the figures turned, their gazes fixing on Amelia like predators on prey. She couldn't see their faces, only the emptiness beneath their hoods. It felt like staring into the abyss, and the abyss was staring back. Terror, raw and consuming, gripped Amelia. She knew instinctively that she shouldn't be here, that she had stumbled onto something ancient and evil. Turning on her heel, she ran. The forest seemed to close in around her, the trees reaching out with gnarled branches like grasping claws. Behind her the chanting resumed, louder this time, laced with a new urgency. Footsteps pounded the muddy ground, gaining on her. Thorns tore at her clothes, branches whipped her face, but she didn't dare slow down. The image of the hooded figures, their empty gazes, fueled her flight. She didn't know how long she ran, her lungs burning, legs screaming for respite. The storm seemed to be chasing her, the wind howling like the creatures she knew were on her trail. Her only hope was to reach the relative safety of her tent, to put some distance between herself and the nightmare she had stumbled upon. Finally, through the driving rain, she saw the faint outline of her tent. Hope surged through her, pushing her forward. Reaching the tent, she scrambled inside, zipping it closed behind her. She lay there huddled on the floor, her chest heaving, listening to the sounds of the storm and the pounding hearts of her pursuers. Minutes stretched into an eternity. The chanting grew fainter, then faded altogether. Had they lost her? Relief, tentative and fragile, began to bloom within her. She was safe. She was alone, or so she thought. A sound barely audible over the storm sent a fresh wave of terror through her. It was a whisper, close to her ear, its tone chillingly calm amidst the chaos of the storm. It wasn't the wind, it wasn't the rain. It came from inside the tent. "She found us," the voice whispered, sending shivers down her spine. It wasn't a question, but a statement, a promise. Amelia's blood ran cold. She fumbled for her flashlight, her fingers shaking so violently she could barely grip it. As the zipper of her tent slowly began to open, bathing her in the eerie glow of that impossible fire, the whisper came again, closer this time, laced with an amusement more terrifying than any scream. "We were waiting for you!"
Rain lashed against the canvas of my tent, a steady rhythm against the background hum of the forest. I inhaled the earthy scent of wet pine needles and damp earth, a sense of peace settling over me. Solo camping, especially on nights like this, was my escape, my sanctuary. The crackling fire cast dancing shadows on the surrounding trees, the flames a comforting presence in the darkness. I hugged my knees to my chest, listening to the symphony of the rain, the wind whistling through the leaves, and the occasional hoot of an owl. The city, with its noise and constant motion, felt a million miles away. Each raindrop seemed to wash away a piece of the day's worries, leaving me feeling cleansed and renewed. I loved the feeling of being alone, yet surrounded by the living, breathing forest. It was in these moments of solitude that I felt most myself. A twig snapped in the distance, followed by the sound of footsteps squelching on the wet ground. My head shot up, heart pounding. I wasn't expecting anyone, least of all in this weather. A silhouette emerged from the darkness, the faint glow of my fire reflecting in familiar bright eyes. "Liam?" I exclaimed, my voice a mixture of surprise and relief. He grinned, his face illuminated by a flash of lightning. "Thought you could use some company." Liam, my best friend since childhood, always had a knack for finding me, even in the middle of nowhere. He dropped his backpack, water dripping from his rain-soaked hair. "Besides," he said, his voice barely audible above the wind, "you owe me a rematch in Truth or Dare." We huddled closer to the fire, our laughter echoing through the trees. The game of Truth or Dare, a tradition since childhood, had taken on a new intensity tonight. Perhaps it was the intimacy of the small tent, the closeness forced by the storm raging outside. Or maybe it was the flickering firelight that painted everything in shades of orange and shadow, making Liam's eyes seem darker, his smile more captivating. "Truth or Dare, Maya?" he asked, his voice low and teasing. I hesitated. "Truth?" I said, my voice barely a whisper. He leaned closer, his gaze unwavering. "Have you ever thought about kissing me?" My breath hitched. The question hung in the air between us, heavy with unspoken emotions. The playful banter of our usual game seemed to melt away, replaced by a sudden, electrifying tension. "Dare," I blurted out, breaking eye contact. My heart pounded against my ribs, a wild drumbeat in the silence that followed. Liam's smile returned, slow this time, a hint of mischief in his eyes. "I dare you to kiss me." The dare hung in the air, echoing the unspoken truth that lingered between us. The rain continued its relentless symphony on the tent. The fire crackled, sending sparks spiraling upwards like fleeting stars. For a moment the world seemed to shrink, until it was just the two of us, bathed in the warm glow of the flames. Slowly, hesitantly, I leaned towards him. My breath caught in my throat as our lips met. It was a tentative touch, a whisper of a promise against the backdrop of the storm. But in that single fleeting moment something shifted, irrevocably changed. Section 5. Echoes of Laughter and Rain. We pulled away, gazes locking, the air thick with unspoken words. The tension, instead of dissipating, seemed to crackle between us, fueled by the shared secret of the kiss. Liam's eyes, usually sparkling with mischief, held a depth I hadn't noticed before, a tenderness that made my heart flutter. He reached out, tucking a stray strand of hair behind my ear, his fingers lingering against my cheek. A wave of laughter bubbled up inside me, breaking the tension. It was a surprised, breathless laugh, a release of all the pent-up emotions swirling within me. Liam laughed too, the sound warm and comforting, and soon we were both caught in a fit of giggles, our bodies shaking with each other's mirth. Section 6. The Space Between Words. The rest of the night passed in a blur of shared stories, whispered secrets, and lingering glances. The game lay forgotten, replaced by something deeper, a newfound intimacy that painted our familiar dynamic in a different light. We talked about everything and nothing, our words punctuated by comfortable silences filled with the sounds of the rain and the crackling fire. I found myself noticing things I hadn't before. The way Liam's eyes crinkled when he laughed, the way his hand unconsciously mimicked the rhythm of his words when he was excited. The storm outside raged on, but inside the tent, a different kind of storm was brewing. A storm of emotions, of unspoken feelings and unspoken truths. We didn't address the kiss, but its memory lingered in the air between us, a tangible presence. Section 7. Dawn's Gentle Light. Dawn arrived, painting the sky in hues of soft pink and orange, signaling the end of our night. The storm had passed, leaving behind a world washed clean and glistening. The forest dripped with a million tiny diamonds, the air fragrant with the scent of wet earth and pine. We emerged from the tent, blinking in the soft morning light. The world felt different, new. The familiar landscape of the forest seemed imbued with a new kind of magic, a subtle shift in perception. As we packed up our things, a comfortable silence settled between us. The air was no longer thick with unspoken words, but rather with a shared understanding, a silent acknowledgement of the shift in our relationship that lay ahead. Section 9. An Unexplored Horizon. As Liam dropped me off at my apartment, he turned to me, his expression a mixture of uncertainty and hope. "So," he began, his voice hesitant. "About last night." I cut him off, my heart pounding in my chest. "Don't," I whispered, my hand on the door handle. "Not yet." He nodded, a slow smile spreading across his face. "Okay," he said, his voice soft. "But maybe sometime?" I met his gaze, my heart overflowing with a confusing mix of emotions. "Maybe," I echoed, stepping out of the car and into the sunshine of the new day. As I watched him drive away, I knew that nothing would ever be the same again. The rain, the game, the kiss, they had changed everything, opening the door to an unexplored horizon in our friendship, one filled with both fear and exhilarating possibility. And for the first time, I was ready to face the unknown, hand in hand with my best friend, ready to see where this new path would lead us. The forest knew her. It welcomed her. Every twisting path, every whispering leaf held no fear for Alara. She was a creature of the wild, born with the scent of pine needles and damp earth clinging to her skin. The forest was her sanctuary, her cathedral, her playground. Alara loved the feeling of solitude the ancient woods provided. She would often spend days alone, her tent pitched under the watchful gaze of the silent trees. There was a calmness here, a deep and abiding peace that she found nowhere else. The townspeople spoke of dangers lurking in the shadows. They told tales of lost souls and malevolent spirits. Alara would only smile and shake her head. She knew the secrets of the forest. She felt the pulse of its ancient heart. For Alara, the forest was not a place of fear, but a place of belonging. Rain hammered the canvas of Alara's tent. The relentless downpour created a symphony of nature's raw power, each drop a note in a chaotic melody. Inside, Alara listened intently, her heart beating in rhythm with the storm outside. She had always felt a strange connection to the rain, as if it spoke to her in a language only she could understand. The wind howled like a vengeful spirit, whipping the branches of the trees against each other in a frenzy. It was as if the forest itself was alive, reacting to some unseen turmoil. The gusts of wind seemed to carry whispers, ancient and mysterious, that beckoned Alara to step outside and become one with the storm. She should have been afraid. She should have sought shelter in the sturdy walls of her cottage on the edge of the woods. The cottage, with its warm hearth and comforting familiarity, was a sanctuary from the wild elements. Yet, despite the safety it offered, Alara felt a restlessness that she couldn't ignore. But Alara was drawn to the storm, compelled by some unseen force to venture deeper into the forest's embrace. The rain-soaked ground squelched beneath her boots as she walked, each step taking her further from the safety of her home and deeper into the unknown. The forest seemed to welcome her, its dark canopy providing a strange sense of comfort. Lightning flashed, momentarily illuminating a path through the dense undergrowth. The brief bursts of light revealed glimpses of the forest's hidden beauty, the leaves glistening like emeralds in the storm. Alara followed the path, her curiosity piqued by the fleeting visions of the forest's secrets. And there, in the heart of the storm, stood a tree like no other. It was an oak, ancient and gnarled, its branches reaching towards the heavens like skeletal fingers. The tree seemed to pulse with an energy that resonated with Alara's own heartbeat, drawing her closer with each passing moment. It was an oak, ancient and gnarled, its branches reaching towards the heavens like skeletal fingers. The tree's presence was almost otherworldly, its twisted limbs telling tales of centuries past. Alara felt as if she had stepped into a different realm, one where time moved differently, and the boundaries between reality and myth blurred. Its trunk was as wide as a house, its bark a tapestry of knots and whorls that whispered of centuries gone by. Each groove and crevice seemed to hold a story, a fragment of history etched into the wood. Alara ran her fingers over the bark, feeling the rough texture beneath her fingertips and sensing the life force that coursed through the ancient tree. Alara felt an undeniable pull towards it, a magnetic attraction that she could not resist. It was as if the tree was calling out to her, inviting her to uncover its secrets. She stood before the oak, the rain soaking her to the bone, and felt a profound connection to the ancient being. She curled up at the base of the oak, seeking shelter beneath its sprawling canopy. The tree's massive branches provided a shield from the storm, creating a small haven where Alara could rest. She felt a sense of peace wash over her, as if the tree was protecting her from the chaos outside. As she drifted off to sleep, she could have sworn she felt the tree shift, its ancient limbs groaning under the weight of its secrets. The sound was almost like a lullaby, a gentle reminder that she was not alone. Alara closed her eyes, feeling the tree's presence envelop her, and surrendered to the embrace of the ancient oak. The tree spoke to her in her dreams. It was not just any tree, but an ancient sentinel of the forest, its roots deep in the earth, its branches reaching for the heavens. Alara had always felt a strange connection to this tree, as if it held secrets that were meant for her alone. Its voice was the rustling of leaves, the creaking of branches, and the soft murmur of the wind. Each sound carried a message, a fragment of a story long forgotten by the world. The sigh of the wind through its ancient heartwood was like a whisper from the past, a gentle reminder of the tree's enduring presence. It had witnessed countless seasons, seen the rise and fall of civilizations, and now it chose to share its wisdom with Alara. It told her stories of a time before time, when the world was young and full of wonder. The forest was a place of magic and mystery, where every tree, every leaf, and every creature had a story to tell. In those days, magic pulsed through the very veins of the earth, a vibrant energy that connected all living things. The land was alive with possibilities, and the air was thick with enchantment. It spoke of beings of immense power, guardians of the forest who wielded magic with ease. These creatures of shadow and light walked the earth as gods, their presence a testament to the forest's ancient power. These ethereal beings moved through the forest with grace, their every step a dance of light and shadow. They were the keepers of the forest's secrets, protectors of its ancient wisdom. The tree spoke of ancient pacts and forgotten rituals, ceremonies that bound the forest and its inhabitants in a delicate balance. These rituals were a testament to the deep connection between the forest and those who revered it. Sacrifices were made and blood was spilled in the name of forgotten deities. These acts, though dark, were a part of the forest's history, a reminder of the lengths to which beings would go to protect their home. Alara listened, her mind reeling with the weight of the tree's words. She felt a deep sense of awe and responsibility, as if she had been chosen to carry these stories forward. The tree's words painted vivid pictures in her mind, images of a world both beautiful and terrifying. She saw the forest in all its glory, a place of wonder and danger where every shadow held a secret. The beauty of the forest was undeniable, but so was its danger. The mist that hung in the air, the light that filtered through the trees, all spoke of a world that was both enchanting and perilous. She felt a connection to this ancient being, a bond that transcended language or reason. It was as if the tree's very essence had become a part of her, its stories now intertwined with her own. This bond was a source of comfort and strength, a reminder that she was not alone. The tree's wisdom was now hers to carry, a gift that came with great responsibility. But as the night wore on, the whispers grew darker. The tree's stories took on a more ominous tone, speaking of betrayal and loss, of a darkness that threatened to consume all light. The tree spoke of betrayal and loss, of friends turned foes and trust shattered. It was a tale of sorrow, a reminder that even the most ancient and powerful beings were not immune to the ravages of time and treachery, a darkness that threatened to consume all light, a blight that had fallen upon the land. This darkness was not just a physical presence, but a creeping despair that sought to extinguish hope and joy. It spoke of a curse, a malevolent force that had taken root in the heart of the forest. This curse was a blight that poisoned the land, turning vibrant life into decay. The blight had spread, its tendrils reaching into every corner of the forest. Trees withered and died, their once strong trunks now hollow and brittle. The land itself seemed to cry out in pain, its lifeblood tainted by the curse. The very air they breathed was poisoned, thick with the stench of decay. The forest, once a place of life and magic, had become a shadow of its former self, a place of sorrow and despair. Alara woke with a gasp, her heart pounding. She had been dreaming, but the details were already slipping away like mist in the morning sun. The forest around her was eerily quiet, the only sound the distant call of a bird. She sat up slowly, her body aching from the damp ground. The air was thick with the scent of wet earth and pine, a reminder of the storm that had raged through the night. The storm had passed, leaving behind a world washed clean and sparkling. Raindrops clung to the leaves, catching the light and turning the forest into a shimmering wonderland. It was as if the storm had breathed new life into the woods, every leaf and blade of grass glistening with renewed vigor. Sunlight dappled the forest floor, casting long shadows between the trees. The interplay of light and shadow created a mosaic of patterns on the ground, a dance of nature that was both mesmerizing and calming. Alara took a deep breath, feeling the cool, fresh air fill her lungs. It was a stark contrast to the oppressive heat and humidity of the previous day. For a moment, the dream seemed like just that, a dream. But there was something about it that felt too real, too vivid to be dismissed so easily. She tried to recall the images, the sensations, but they remained just out of reach, like shadows at the edge of her vision. She shook her head, trying to clear the lingering fog from her mind. But as she stretched and stood, her gaze fell upon something that sent a chill down her spine. There, at the base of a towering oak tree, was a series of carvings. They were deep and intricate, etched into the bark with a precision that spoke of both skill and intent. Alara felt a shiver run through her as she approached the tree. Her curiosity piqued. Carved into the base of the oak tree, etched deep into its ancient bark, were symbols. They were unlike anything she had ever seen before, a language of spirals and glyphs that seemed to writhe and shift before her eyes. The symbols were mesmerizing, drawing her in with their strange, otherworldly beauty. They were unlike anything she had ever seen before, a language of spirals and glyphs that seemed to writhe and shift before her eyes. Each symbol was unique, yet they all seemed to be part of a larger, more complex pattern. It was as if the tree itself was trying to communicate with her, to share its ancient secrets. She reached out to touch them, her fingers tracing the strange patterns. The bark was rough and cool under her fingertips, the carvings deep and precise. As she traced the symbols, she felt a strange energy coursing through her, a connection to something ancient and powerful. It was as if the tree was alive, its very essence flowing through the carvings and into her. As she did, a wave of dizziness washed over her. She staggered back, her vision blurring as the forest seemed to spin around her. She closed her eyes, trying to steady herself, but the images continued to assault her mind. They were fragmented and confusing, a jumble of sights and sounds that made no sense. Images flashed through her mind, fragmented and confusing, visions of hooded figures chanting around a flickering fire. Their faces were hidden in the shadows, their voices a low, rhythmic murmur that sent chills down her spine. The firelight danced on their robes, casting eerie shadows that seemed to move with a life of their own. Of a dark well, its depths promising untold power. The well was ancient, its stones worn smooth by centuries of use. It seemed to pulse with a dark energy, a promise of power and knowledge that was both alluring and terrifying. Alara felt a pull towards it, a desire to peer into its depths and uncover its secrets. Of a woman, her face twisted in pain, a single tear rolling down her cheek. The woman's eyes were filled with sorrow, her expression one of deep, unending grief. Alara felt a pang of empathy, a connection to the woman's pain that was both intense and inexplicable. She wanted to reach out, to comfort her, but the vision faded before she could move. Alara stumbled back, her hand flying to her mouth. The visions had been so vivid, so real, that she could still feel the echoes of them in her mind. She looked around the forest, half expecting to see the hooded figures or the dark well, but there was nothing, just the quiet, sun-dappled woods, as peaceful and serene as ever. What did it all mean? The symbols, the visions, the strange energy she had felt, it was all too much to process. She felt a growing sense of unease, a feeling that she was on the brink of discovering something profound and dangerous. She needed answers, but she had no idea where to start. What secrets did this tree hold? It was ancient, its bark gnarled and weathered by time. It had stood in this forest for centuries, witnessing countless events and changes. Alara felt a deep respect for the tree, a sense of awe at its age and wisdom. But she also felt a sense of foreboding, a feeling that the tree's secrets were not meant to be uncovered lightly. And who had carved these symbols into its flesh? The carvings were old, but not as old as the tree itself. Someone had come here, had taken the time to etch these symbols into the bark. But who? And why? Alara knew she had to find out. She had to uncover the secrets of the Deepwood, no matter the cost.
The woods called to me, especially when it rained. There was a magnetic pull, an irresistible urge to be amidst the trees when the heavens opened up. The rain transformed the forest into a mystical realm, where every droplet seemed to whisper secrets of the ancient woods. The harder it poured, the deeper I craved its embrace. The relentless downpour was like a symphony, each raindrop a note in a grand composition that only the forest could orchestrate. It was as if the rain had a soul, and it spoke to mine in a language only we understood. There was something about the solitude, the symphony of the raindrops on the leaves, that brought a strange sense of peace to my soul. The world outside ceased to exist, and all that mattered was the rhythmic patter of rain on the canopy above. It was a sanctuary, a place where I could lose myself and find myself all at once. The city felt 1,000,000 miles away. The hustle and bustle, the noise and chaos all faded into oblivion. Out here in the heart of the storm, I was free, free from the constraints of modern life, free to be one with nature. Out here it was just me and the wild. The forest was my companion, the rain my confidant. Every step I took was a dance with nature, every breath a communion with the earth. The wild rain was not just a backdrop, it was an integral part of my existence. Tonight, the storm was particularly fierce. The rain came down in sheets, the wind howling through the trees like a chorus of spirits. It was a tempest, a wild and untamed force that demanded respect and reverence. The wind howled like a banshee. It whipped through the forest, bending trees to its will, creating a symphony of creaks and groans. It was both terrifying and exhilarating, a reminder of nature's raw power. Each gust threatened to rip my tent from its moorings. The fabric flapped wildly, straining against the stakes that anchored it to the ground. But I held firm, trusting in my preparations and the strength of my shelter. But I wasn't afraid, not one bit. The storm was a test, a challenge that I welcomed with open arms. It was a chance to prove my resilience, to show that I could weather any storm, both literal and metaphorical. I snuggled deeper into my sleeping bag, a contented smile playing on my lips. The storm raged outside, but inside my little cocoon I was warm and safe. The wild rain sang me a lullaby, and I drifted off to sleep with a heart full of peace. This was my happy place, a place where the wild rain and I could coexist in perfect harmony, a place where I could find solace and strength no matter what storms life threw my way. The storm raged for what felt like hours. The forest floor transformed into a network of rushing streams. The wind continued its eerie song, whispering secrets through the trees. I closed my eyes, lulled by the rhythm of the rain drumming against my tent. Suddenly a sound pierced through the symphony of the storm. A baby's cry, faint, distant. My eyes snapped open. A chill ran down my spine. Had I imagined it? I strained to listen, my heart pounding in my chest. The wind howled, the rain hammered the tent, but there it was again. A tiny whimper, unmistakably human. I sat up, my breath catching in my throat. This was impossible. I was alone, completely alone. Curiosity mixed with a growing dread propelled me out of my warm cocoon. Zipping my jacket up to my chin, I stepped out into the deluge. The cold rain felt like needles on my skin. The forest was a swirling vortex of shadows and rain. Each gust of wind threatened to knock me off my feet. But I pressed on, my flashlight beam dancing frantically in the darkness. The baby's cries were growing louder now, more insistent. My heart hammered against my ribs. Part of me wanted to turn back, to retreat to the safety of my tent. But something drew me forward, a primal need to help, to protect. And then I saw it. A small figure standing alone in the middle of the path. My breath hitched. It was a baby, so tiny, so vulnerable. Its skin was pale and slick with rain. It wore nothing but a thin, soaked-through onesie. My mind struggled to grasp the impossible scene before me. How could a baby be out here, alone, in this weather? It made no sense. Yet there it was, a fragile life at the mercy of the storm. Section 6. Racing Against the Phantom Cry. "It's okay, little one," I whispered, my voice barely audible above the roar of the wind. "I'm here now." I moved closer, my arms outstretched. I had to get it out of the cold, had to get it warm. But something stopped me in my tracks. The baby wasn't crying anymore. It just stood there, staring at me with wide, unblinking eyes. Its face was devoid of expression, no fear, no tears, just a chilling, empty gaze. Section 7. Emptiness in the Dripping Woods. The forest was a labyrinth of shadows and whispers, each raindrop a tiny echo of the emptiness that surrounded me. The trees loomed like silent sentinels, their branches dripping with the weight of the storm. A wave of unease washed over me. I shivered, despite the layers of clothing. The cold seemed to seep into my very bones, making every step feel like a struggle against the elements. The rain was relentless, each drop a tiny dagger of ice against my skin. I had to get the baby back to my tent, quickly. The urgency of the situation pressed down on me, a heavy weight that made my heart race. The forest path was treacherous, slick with mud and hidden roots that threatened to trip me with every step. Turning on my heel, I ran back the way I came, my heart pounding in my ears. The sound of my own breath was loud in the silence of the woods, a harsh reminder of my desperation. Each footfall was a splash in the puddles that had formed on the path. The image of the baby's vacant eyes was seared into my mind. Those eyes, so empty and lifeless, haunted me with every step. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong, that the forest itself was conspiring against me. I fumbled with the zipper of my tent, my hands shaking. The rain made everything slippery, and my fingers felt numb from the cold. It was as if the tent itself was resisting my efforts, a cruel joke played by the elements. Finally, I managed to wrestle it open. The inside of the tent was a small refuge from the storm, but it felt like a hollow victory. I knew I couldn't stay there, not with the baby still out in the rain. Grabbing a thick blanket, I raced back out into the storm. The blanket was heavy and cumbersome, but it was the only thing I could think of to keep the baby warm. My mind raced with thoughts of what could have happened, each one more terrifying than the last. But the path was empty, the baby was gone. The realization hit me like a punch to the gut, leaving me breathless and disoriented. The forest seemed to close in around me, the shadows deepening as the rain continued to fall. I was alone, and the emptiness of the dripping woods was all that remained. Section 8. Whispers of the Unseen. I searched for hours, my flashlight beam cutting through the darkness, but there was no sign of the baby. No footprints, no discarded blanket, nothing. It was as if it had vanished into thin air. Exhausted and terrified, I returned to my tent. The storm raged on, but the sound of the rain now seemed different, more menacing. Every rustle of leaves, every creak of a branch sent shivers down my spine. I lay awake the rest of the night, haunted by the image of the baby's vacant eyes. Section 9. Forever haunted by silence. Morning came, pale and washed out. The forest, once a cacophony of rain and wind, now stood eerily silent. The storm had raged through the night, its fury unmatched, but now in the aftermath there was a stillness that felt almost unnatural. The storm had finally passed, leaving behind a world cleansed and sparkling. Raindrops clung to every leaf and branch, catching the first light of dawn and turning the forest into a shimmering wonderland. It was a sight to behold, yet it brought me no comfort. But the beauty of the morning did little to ease my troubled mind. The events of the previous night played over and over in my head, each memory more haunting than the last. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. I packed up my gear and left the woods, my footsteps heavy with unanswered questions. Every rustle of leaves, every distant bird call seemed to whisper secrets I couldn't quite grasp. The forest, once a place of solace, now felt like a labyrinth of mysteries. What had I seen that night? Was it real? The image of the baby, so out of place in the storm, haunted me. Its eyes, wide and unblinking, seemed to pierce through the darkness, reaching into my very soul. I questioned my sanity, wondering if the storm had conjured some illusion, or had the storm played tricks on my mind. I may never know. The line between reality and imagination blurred, leaving me in a state of perpetual doubt. The forest, with its ancient trees and hidden shadows, seemed to hold answers I was too afraid to see. But one thing is certain. I will never forget the baby in the storm. Its presence, so inexplicable and haunting, left an indelible mark on my psyche. The memory of that night, with its howling winds and relentless rain, will forever be etched in my mind, and I will never camp alone in the rain again. The forest, once a place of adventure and discovery, had become a realm of fear and uncertainty. As I walked away, the weight of the night's events pressed heavily on my shoulders, a reminder of the mysteries that lurk in the shadows.